Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Project Edward webinar on the new National Road Safety Strategy. My name's James Luckhurst. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I think it's 9:30. We will crack on. The session is being recorded and we'll post the recording in the showcase section of the Project Edward website, hopefully later today. We hope in the next 90 minutes to get a thorough understanding of what's written in the strategy, as well as what it means for day-to-day practice, where the gaps are, partnership working, and the communities that we serve. That's what we have in mind. We're joined by representatives from National Police Chiefs Council, National Fire Chiefs Council, Road Safety GB, academia, the medical community, and specific sector groups, bringing what I'm sure will be a rich mix of operational experience, good evidence, and strategic insight. Together, they'll help us explore how we translate the strategy's ambitions into realistic action on the ground. Now, the session is designed to be high level, concise, and to cover as much as we can in what I'm sure will feel a very short period of time. It's also interactive as much as we can make it, so do please use the opportunity to share your views, challenge assumptions, and pose questions. Use the chat function for that. And we've got a few sessions during the 90-minute period when we will just air some of your ideas, questions, and comments. Please make them specifically based on what you're hearing in this webinar. Okay, just strategy related. So we have a fantastic number of people involved. We won't have the chance to hear all sides, but rest assured that anything you contribute through the chat function will be carefully considered and shared, if possible, for later response and follow-up. So let's get straight down to business. And I'm very pleased to welcome our first three guests. Chief Constable Joe Shiner, KPM, from the National Police Chiefs Council, Dan Quinn from the National Fire Chiefs Council, and Nicola Foster, the Chair of Road Safety GB. Welcome to all of you. Just checking that your microphones are on and your cameras are on. Let's get going and start with Chief Joe Shiner. What's your overall reaction to the strategy, Chief, and its level of ambition?
Lovely. Thanks very much indeed. So I think I'd like to start off, if it's okay, by saying well done, because there is a huge number of people on this call who have lobbied, who have influenced, who have amplified, and have really, I think, worked with such passion and professionalism in order to influence what is in the strategy. And also a well done to those people who listened. So those really hard-working civil servants and others and ministers who have listened to much of, not all, and we'll come on to that, but much of actually what has been said. Because I think sometimes we need to say that, don't we? A well done and thank you to everybody. So I know there's some...
You.
Yeah, and you know, that absolutely includes you as well, for the amount of effort that you put into that. So I know there are some areas which maybe could and should have gone further. I'm very, very conscious that there are probably people on this call for whom GDL was particularly important. And I think that we were looking forward to that being a part of it. But equally, there is a starter for 10 within the policy around it, with some of those things that point towards our learner and less experienced drivers. But on the whole, I'm really positive and very appreciative for what is in it. I think it brings accountability, changes to legislation, which will make a big difference. A few of those: the interim disqualification, drink drive levels, endorsable, non-endorsable offences. But most importantly for me, it introduces the concept of a national board chaired by a minister with an accountable structure underneath, which hopefully, in partnership with the Road Collision Investigation Branch, will really, really help to take us all collectively in the same direction in a really efficient and very collaborative manner. So that's my overall thoughts around it.
Thanks, Chief Shiner. Let's go to Chief Dan Quinn, National Fire Chiefs Council. What's in it for you that's genuinely new or different? What's your take?
Thanks, James. Morning, everybody. So I also emulate very much what Joe has said in terms of the welcome publication of the new road safety strategy. I do think it's a really crucial step towards reducing deaths and serious injuries on our roads. And the strategy, as was mentioned, is certainly a reflection of the government listening and leading, which is why I believe the strategy is so welcomed. Obviously, the intent in terms of what's genuinely new, the intent and the commitment within the last decade is certainly genuinely new. The National Fire Chiefs Council, NFCC, absolutely support the establishment, as mentioned, of the Road Safety Board, the Road Safety Investigation Branch, the recognition of the role of safe system approach, and the effort, at least, to establish targets at this stage. But in terms of, and I don't mean this to be in a negative way, its content actually, for me, reflects more proposals that have been made over the years by road safety experts, campaigners, and public services, and/or learning, which is explicit within it, from other countries that have made greater progress in the UK collectively than the UK collectively. So, as an example, and it's been touched on already, I don't think the strategy goes far enough in regards to young driver safety, or particularly about establishing partnership standards to implement what has been identified as a really critical safe system locally.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Dan Quinn. And may I bring in Nicola Foster? What's your take on the strategy as an overview on behalf of Road Safety GB?
Oh, thank you. And I echo the comments that have already been had, with our thanks to the huge team that's delivered this. We really our targets drive action. So really, really pleased to see the targets there. It offers the opportunity to save over 1,000 lives a year. That's amazing. It raises the issue of road safety being a collective task, and it adds evidence and actions to the conversations that we've been having over several years. So that's fantastic. They're going to publish national guidance on the development and delivery of road safety education, training and publicity. That's fantastic. And a manual to support the implementation of lifelong learning. And that's where Road Safety Great Britain can really come in. With our access to a huge range of practitioners, we can help get that information out there, communicate that. And our job really through our courses and things is to turn policy into practice for our practitioners. And we're here to do that for everybody.
I'm going to come back to Chief Joe Shiner. You've kind of mentioned that there are things missing. So let's just touch on that very briefly before we move on to look more specifically at targets. Where would you identify are the gaps then?
Yeah, I'm a bit like Dan said, I'm really, really overarchingly positive around this. Of course, I'm quite sad for many of the families who campaigned around GDL and maybe some of the stuff for young drivers. I might have liked to have seen random drug testing for people before they take their test, for example, because we know that there will be a certain percentage of people who are actually taking their driving test whilst under the influence of drugs, recreational drugs. So there isn't a huge amount. I think the devil is going to be the detail as we work through some of the review of the road traffic legislation, for example. I might have liked to have seen, and it may be included in there, and I perhaps haven't read enough into it, but I think some of our community groups, such as Speedwatch, some of the focus on the road partnerships around the country, and some of the consistency and delivery and how they actually link into the safer systems model, I probably would have liked to have seen a bit more around that. And the one thing that I do think is missing, and I don't know whether Alan's on the call, I'm not sure that I saw anything in relation to the safety of horses included in the vulnerable users. I may have missed that. But that's the only other bit that I felt a little bit for Alan around.
Alan will be on the call. We'll be hearing from him a little later on. Thank you to all of you. Stay put, because we'll be looking at some of the comments from the from our audience. But let's move on and think about targets. And for that, I welcome Dan Campsell from Agilicis, Saul Jevons, Chair of ARM, the Association of Road Risk Management, and Jamie Hassel from PACTS. Let's start with Dan Campsell then. How can we make these new targets bite, Dan?
Yeah, well, I think as Jo's indicated in her response, I mean, the strategy is welcome, and one of the key elements that's within it is the framing of a new national governance board chaired by the minister. And I think what we've seen in other jurisdictions is that when you get ministerial leadership, it helps for a variety of reasons. So firstly, it means that you've got somebody who's genuinely got, their hands on some levers of power to be able to influence legislation, to influence the development of policy, to influence funding, etc. And they are also democratically accountable. So, they've actually put themselves up to say, I'm going to chair this, I'm going to lead this, I'm going to run this. For example, in Scotland, the Cabinet Secretary for Transport highly committed personally to seeing the delivery of that road safety framework, sees it as very much, a part of their political legacy. So I think that will be important. And I think the second thing that helps that is that then if we are not meeting target, you've got somebody at the helm who's got the ability to exercise influence around funding and other program design in order to seek to get us back on track. So I think that will be enormously helpful, because these targets are very ambitious. They probably go further than I've seen in any decade-long target in any jurisdiction. So it means there's going to be a lot of work to do, and the current level of effort is going to be insufficient. So I think that accountability piece is going to be a very important component.
Let's ask Saul Jevons. Do you see the targets as realistic, Saul?
I think that the phrase I've been using is challenging but achievable. I don't think I think they are realistic. I don't think we're going to achieve them with what's in the strategy at the moment. I think it's going to need a much bolder vision in terms of resourcing, in terms of less consulting, considering and gathering feedback on. I got fairly bored with seeing those phrases in the document, and a lot more just getting on and doing it. I think it's also going to need a lot more cross-governmental action. Disappointing that it doesn't really talk about the Home Office. It talks about Department of Health and Social Care, but lowering the drink drive limit, as we've seen in Scotland over the last decade, hasn't had a significant difference in terms of the amount of death and serious injury we've got related to alcohol. And how much of that is related to resourcing around roads policing and actually catching the people who are breaking whatever you set the limits as. If you don't have things like alcohol interlocks, and if you don't have traffic cops out there stopping people, you can put the limit at whatever you like, but it's not going to have that much effect.
Saul, thank you. Jamie Hassel, how soon will we know that we're genuinely on a trajectory to meet those targets, and what should be in place if interim milestones are missed?
So I would say that we're not currently match fit, shall we say. That it's going to be a bit of a slow start. It's been picked up that actually we're consulting on lots of stuff rather than just saying, right, this is what we're going to do and kick off. So I don't think we're going to see sort of a major downward trend in the first year. But I think actually we've got some of the building blocks in there. And like what people have picked up about what's in the strategy, I see that for what's in the first year, we've still got 9 more years for the other things, sort of thing. So, I mean, a 65% reduction, young drivers, I think they make up 24% of the current sort of deaths and stuff. They will have to be a key feature in this if we're going to hit that target, sort of thing. So I would love to see more detail in here, but I'm not, should we say, worried, as long as that commitment to deliver those targets stays there. So, I would say the targets make this strategy. Yeah. The other bits are kind of, in a sense, a bit of fluff around that. But, to me, things like the Road Safety Investigation Branch, that hopefully will be things that will drive other interventions and things like that. So, yeah, so I think it's going to be a slow start. And so I think Dan did some work that says it's a 10% a year reduction. I think in the first year, if we get a 2 or 3, we should be happy. And then actually we should be looking for bigger reductions, and then it might tail off again towards the end, because the more you address, the harder it gets. So
thank you very much, Jamie. I'm going to move on. We're going to come back and talk specifically to you about how we measure the targets, how we hold ourselves accountable a little bit later. Let's move on to introduce Joy Allen, Durham Police and Crime Commissioner, and Chris Lewis on behalf of the Warwickshire Police and Crime Commissioner. Hello to both of you. Start with Joy. Looking at the overall ambition and the proposed measures, what's your reaction to the strategy?
Well, firstly, I have to say, credit where credit's due. It's a long overdue road safety strategy, and credit to everybody on this call who have been campaigning tirelessly, especially the bereaved families and road safety advocates who have really made it clear the deaths on our road are inevitable. So I think that lived experience alongside the growing body of evidence must continue to shape delivery if we're going to hit these ambitious targets. As PCCs, we see the devastating impact of dangerous driving on families and on communities, and it's vital that we as leaders play a big part in turning this ambition into action. What we haven't mentioned, and as a PCC I have to mention this, is it needs to be funded, and that's really, really important, or where the person who's responsible is full cost recovery. That's another ask that I'd want, and I'd also want the and indoors courses for those who are drink, drug and dangerous driving. So I do welcome the measures. They must go further, and we've also talked about the graduated driving licence and time limited protections, such as the curfews and driver restrictions. But I think where we've got ambitious targets, that's a real opportunity to go further and really continue the campaign. And because we have got the evidence that these measures that we've talked about that aren't in the strategy need to be there to really hit them. So yes, continue. It's great to see the strategy, but we've got a lot of work to do, and campaigning is a big part of that.
Chris Lewis, to what extent does the strategy give you confidence that young road users' lives will be better protected in future?
Well, first of all, apologies from Philip. His diary is absolutely crazy, but literally as we speak, he is briefing local MPs about this strategy. But the broad messages from Philip today are, first of all, obviously he welcomes it, and he's very grateful and thankful to the whole community who's contributed towards this. He particularly likes targets. We have set targets in Warwickshire, and it's good news that there is going to be governance sat behind those targets. So very much likes that. But the big message from Philip today is very disappointed around graduated driver licence. And obviously, whilst there is an acknowledgement and recognition of some of the young driver agenda, it's becoming a bit of a cliche maybe, but this just doesn't go far enough. And Philip is determined to keep working on this to try and convince government that we need to do more for young drivers, novice drivers and their vulnerability. He also needs to make the point about speed fines. There doesn't seem to be any mention about, what should we call it, netting off hypothecation. Fact of the matter is, use Warwickshire as a little example. We sent £3.5 million to the Treasury last year. Now, we could do a lot with that in Warwickshire in terms of promoting and doing more in terms of road safety and roads policing. So we would like some focus on that. And finally, final point, it's great. It's a great statement of intent. But what's the plan? What's the delivery? There's going to be resource implication. We need to get into that detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Chris Lewis and to Joy Allen. Please stay with us. I'm now going to hand over to Paul Steinberg to provide his point of view. Paul Steinberg from the Road Safety Trust. Paul.
Thanks, James. Good morning, everyone. 3 brief points from me. First, this strategy genuinely matters because after a long period without a clear national framework, it's clear that the government are back on the pitch, and for the sector, we have a shared direction of travel. Importantly, we've got a reset around ambition, accountability, and importantly, the role of evidence. I think it reflects a more collaborative way of working from the top down, shaped by the live consultations until the 31st of March, but also the National Board. And it demonstrates that government listened and are continuing to listen. Second, it's encouraging for us how strongly evidence-based the strategy is, drawing on the kind of research and innovation that the Trust has funded for over a decade. And we're proud of that, not for its own sake, but because it shows that good evidence can and should influence policy when it's taken seriously, which is a lesson for other policy areas. And third, as mentioned, not everything the sector argued for strongly is here, including GDL, and those debates will rightly continue. But what does feel different, I think, is the relationship with government. For years, predating me in this sector, but I understand that the sector's rightly lobbied ministers to show leadership and set bold targets for road safety. We now have them, and those targets are both galvanising and daunting because they elevate road safety from a seemingly discretionary issue to a national priority. But accountability doesn't run just one way. Government will now expect delivery, evidence of impact, and results from all of us across the system. So yes, a genuine milestone, but the real test, of course, is going to be the delivery, because targets alone don't save lives. Decisions, funding, and action is what's going to be key. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. John Robertson from UK Roed for your point of view.
Morning, James. Firstly, just a well done to you and your team for pulling this together on a Friday morning at such short notice. Great effort. Obviously, everyone knows UK Road has a clear vision: 0 deaths, 0 injuries on UK roads. And it's important for us that we recognise there are a lot of well-prepared local strategies across the country, but to see a national strategy published is something that we really welcome. You won't be surprised we'll now consider what this means for us, what it means for the Endor scheme, the governance, the development of it, and we look forward to working with partners as we move forward in the future. Something that sticks out for me personally, it's great to see that a lot of people's views have been taken on board. We may not have gone far enough at this stage, but I don't think it's a time for two things. You don't take a sigh of relief that it's here, and you don't take a sigh of disappointment. Now's the start, then we can really push on and develop this. We look forward to, as part of that, working constructively with government partners on the feedback and on the consultation period. But something that stuck out for me is something that Joe Shiner said. It's important that people take responsibility for their actions on the road, and we include ourselves in that. So for us, we're going to continue to plough all of our efforts into removing risk and harm from UK roads. And what that means for us is that we're going to work together with everyone on this call, but within the wider road safety network, so that we can collaborate, engage with each other, and achieve not only the targets, but go further. Those targets, we shouldn't just hit them and agree that's job done. We need to get to Vision Zero.
John Robertson from UK Road, I'm very grateful. We're going to spend some time talking about different parts of the strategy now, specifically now young drivers. And to help us do that are Stuart Lockery, James Evans and Joy Allen. I hope, Joy, you're still there to have that conversation. Stuart, just give us your take then on the strategy from your point of view. Okay. We'll move on. I'm sure we can pick Stuart up in a moment. James Evans, are you there? Let's talk about GDL. We haven't got GDL as part of the strategy. What can be done to compensate for the lack of a GDL scheme?
Yeah, so just to echo what everyone else has said, completely welcome the strategy, but in relation to young drivers, it probably hasn't gone far enough. A lot of consultation, as people have said, where there's a lot of evidence already available, and the opportunity for consultation has been on the table for a very, very, very long time. I can totally see why the government maybe wouldn't want to upset 16-year-olds with the potential for them to be getting the vote, or need to have to get the vote for political purposes in the short term. But in lieu of that, we could have explored things. I didn't see really telematics referenced outside of the technology space. The reduction of insurance premium tax for people to take telematics insurance as a young driver could have been an easy policy change. Perhaps the establishment of some sort of Motability style scheme for young drivers to give them better access to vehicles that have the technology that is being pushed through the strategy. The ADAS systems, the stuff we know can save young lives, is so far out of reach of the majority of young people. I think there was a lot of talk of technology, but not the application of how that might be made accessible for young people. And of course, 6 to 9 months is already enforced as a delayed licensure through the backlog. I mean, even our TikToker Keenan said that to me yesterday, and he's had a cursory glance of it. So yeah, I mean, for me, and my final sort of thought on it is that I don't particularly love targets. I love to see estimates based on actions. If this had been bolder and had said, this is what we're going to do, and based on doing that, a little bit like the Scandinavians did with Vision Zero, the estimates of the lives that can be saved are X, Y, and Z. I'd like to see that as a footnote below the bold action, rather than a target, which, is welcome. We all welcome it. But yes, it could have perhaps gone a little further in relation to young drivers.
Thank you very much, James Evans. I think Stuart is with us now, and it was entirely my fault for you not being able to speak, Stuart. Are you there with us now?
I am, and that's such a relief to hear, James. Thank you very much.
Let's just look at this idea. We've stopped short of full graduated driver licensing. First of all, a quick overview of your take on the strategy, but then why would a government choose a lighter package than the evidence-based supports? It doesn't make sense, does it?
So I'll take that point first, James. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone on this call who and listening in that graduated GDL has not been taken forward. I looking at some of the academic research that has been quoted, I just find it really interesting that they're cherry picking the bits around minimum driving periods, but those same papers are actually going on at the end in their conclusions to say that GDL may be a more effective policy. I'm not an academic, I just find that really interesting, but I don't think it's any surprise. The National Joint Council will continue to support efforts to have a proper debate around GDL. However, from my profession's perspective, I'm concerned that we have a 22,000 word document that does not mention driving instructors. I think this is a problem because right now, as many people will be aware of, but unfortunately many more are not, the basic training for driving instructors, the basic training, and I say this in the context that many people are not aware of, that we have no mandatory requirement for CPD in our profession. So our basic training is inadequate for the problems that we currently face. We need to modernise driving instructor training in much the same way that they are talking about in the motorcycle training in the road safety strategy. That's what we need for driving instructors. We need to
And very briefly, Stuart, what would that entail? How do we make that happen, do you think?
That involves upskilling 40,000, upwards of 44,000 driving instructors, and enabling them to be able to work around behavioural issues and higher order cognitive skills. We do not have that at the moment. We have driving instructors who teach skills and knowledge in order to pass a driving test.
Joy Allen, Durham Police and Crime Commissioner, the strategy talks about balance between safety and mobility for young people. How do you respond to that when balance is used as the reason not to implement measures that other countries have used to save large numbers of young lives?
I think, as everybody's said so far, if there is a bit of a battle, and I think the opportunity to have a minister around a board to deliver these strategies is important, because where you've got the evidence, that's our power to our elbow, really. And I think where we've got it, and I think we've been told this from, especially this new government, there is a unfairly penalising young drivers. That's the challenge that we have to overcome. But I think the will in the public's really strong. And I have to say, credit to Crystal for pulling that video together. I mean, I think if there's more that we can do collectively to support getting the mythbusters out about what we're talking about with graduated driving licence and what we're asking for, because there is, as somebody's just been saying, that the cherry picking, we've got challenges around to come back equally stronger and tougher. To get that message across about what we're actually asking for, what the evidence is, and how we can save young lives on the road. So I think we have to work together to overcome some of that pushback, because it might not be coming from the DFT, it might be coming from another department, but we really have to be strong and to make sure that every time I see a newsreel on the television or the radio where two 17-year-old drivers out at a night time or early hours of the morning, I just think GDL would have saved their lives, because they wouldn't have been out and they wouldn't have been in a car. So I think there's a lot of comms really to back this up going forward.
Thank you very much, Durham Police and Crime Commissioner Joy Allen, and also thank you to our other contributors there, Stuart Lockery and James Evans. I'm hoping Simon Turner is on the line. Simon, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I do have a mic, which...
Give us a 60-second roundup of comments and questions. I'm sorry we don't have much time, but please go for it.
There's a really great conversation going in the chat, so thanks to everyone for commenting, and also those of you who've been answering comments as we've gone along. Nick Cowling says a key thing it doesn't do is tackle the huge inequality in road safety delivery effort around the country. Alison Hernandez, delighted that the government is taking road safety seriously, with many things included that we've all been lobbying on. Natalie Moore says, I'm keen to see what this means for funding opportunities to meet the targets, especially for training. Horse riders shown as one of the most at risk groups, but glaringly omitted in the strategy. Becky Reynolds says, glad to see some moves towards control of ghost number plates, an issue pursued by Sarah Coombs, MP. Tony Ransley makes a good point. The government is going to have to embrace and grow the community speedwatch programme to meet their targets. And Helen Wells added to that she would make a similar point around journey cams and dash cams with programmes similar to OpSnap. There's plenty more. Have a look in the chat. Lots of really interesting comments. And again, thank you to everyone who's answering some of those comments as we go. It's a really interesting chat.
Thank you very much, Simon Turner. Let's now move to talk about the Safe Driving in Later Life section. And for that, we're joined by Rob Hurd, MBE from the Older Drivers Forum, Professor Charles Musselwhite from Aberystwyth University, and Malcolm Palmer from Gen Motoring Assist Road Safety Charity. And Professor Musselwhite, is the strategy good news for older road users' safety?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Not sure why my camera's not working there, but I'll speak anyway. You can hear me all right?
Yep.
You carry. So really, I mean, I'll take the strategy as a whole and think about it in terms of older people. I mean, one thing that's really, really exciting about it is the safe system framing. Even if at the moment that doesn't go far enough, the use of that as a framework really helps, particularly disadvantaged groups, particularly has the, whether that's young drivers, older drivers. It also has the potential for helping in terms of pedestrians and other vulnerable spaces in the road system as a whole. So that's really exciting, and I think that has a real potential to make a difference. So the strategy improves the conditions for safer aging on the road as a whole, but perhaps it doesn't quite go far enough. But it's a brilliant starting point. We need more emphasis on low speeds, for example. We need better emphasis on age-friendly street design. We need a little bit more on walking and cycling safety, and we need to look at those in terms of that age-friendly lens as well. I mean, just to illustrate, older people make up 18% of the population, about 20% of pedestrian, and 23% of pedestrians KSI, but 45% of pedestrian deaths. So there's something that has to be done in that pedestrian space. And if we're thinking of alternatives to driving and helping people give up driving, that has to be part of the discussion and the narrative.
Let's move on and talk to Rob Hurd. Rob, mandatory eyesight, possible cognitive testing. How do we do that without trapping older people in a kind of no man's land between unsafe driving and social isolation?
Well, firstly, we're very supportive of the idea of regular eyesight testing because we know it picks up conditions early, allows them to be treated, and allows people to carry on driving much longer than they would have done before so. And cognitive testing, we know there's around about 183 notifiable medical conditions, and we know there's a vast number of underreporting of conditions to the DVLA. So therefore, we know there's a lot of people driving on the roads with conditions that may affect their ability to drive safely. But the key is exactly as Charles was saying, is early and supportive intervention. Regular eyesight testing identifies problems before they become a safety crisis, allowing issues to be treated, but also driving habits to be adjusted or alternative transport to be planned. And that needs to be something that we fund. But we want to avoid that cliff edge where someone suddenly has one day where they have to cease driving. We want to encourage people about planning into older life and give them the reassurance and support to do that and realise it's not a punishment.
Thank you, Rob Hurd. Malcolm Palmer from the GEM Road Safety Charity. You've traditionally supported older driver initiatives. How will the strategy inform the direction taken by the charity in the grants that you give?
Yeah, as several people have already said, delivering this strategy, it has ambitious targets. It's going to need concerted efforts from everyone in the community, and it will strengthen GEM's long-standing commitment to older drivers. We can prioritise grants that directly support longer independent driving for older people, perhaps projects on eyesight, as mentioned, health, self-assessment. And it's a really good point that you don't stop being an older person just at the point you get into the car. So when you're a pedestrian as well, and that overlaps perhaps with things like the headlamp glare is going to affect older people when they're pedestrians as well. So you don't stop just in the car or out of the car. It's a wide-ranging thing. Our funding decision is going to be guided by evidence on collision risk, that sort of thing, vulnerability, and other initiatives, and looking around those. And we'll continue to back innovative schemes where we can, already backing things like the Older Driver Forum. We'll look at awareness campaigns, anything else which is going to help achieve the targets. And as previously, we'll encourage all applicants for funding to show that there will be some sort of measurable impact on what they're suggesting, perhaps partnership working, and how learning and benefits can be spread across the whole of the country.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. We'll move on from there. But I just want to bring back Charles Musselwhite and Rob Hurd. What will success look like? What concrete changes in, let's say, 5 years' time should convince us that the older driver measures in the strategy have been taken seriously? Just very briefly from each of you. Rob Hurd first.
Yeah, success means eyesight testing is routine and accepted. Unsafe vision is identified early, and older drivers feel that licensing system is fair, transparent, and safety-led.
Okay, thank you very much. Charles Musselwhite, to conclude.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Similar, we want it to become the norm, that it's not seen as something unusual or difficult, but really, overall, we want to see that when we reduce collisions, and we're reducing seriously injured and we reduce the number of people killed, that older people are reduced in exactly the same kind of proportional numbers, if not more, not being separate to that. If things like isolation or loneliness increases, if people's mobility fails in later life, then the policy's failed. Really, we've got to keep mobility going while at the same time improving road safety. So it shouldn't be at the expense of mobility.
That's grand. Thank you so much, Professor Charles Musselwhite, Rob Hurd, MBE, and Malcolm Palmer. We welcome back Saul Jevons and Leanne McMahon from the National Fire Chiefs Council, and we'll look at the strategy as it relates to motorcycling. Let's start with Leanne. You're very welcome, Leanne. Training and testing reforms are mentioned, but it feels like we're always reviewing motorcycle training. What do you think in the strategy guarantees that riders will actually see some tougher, better designed training and licensing on the ground within the next few years?
Thank you. Morning, everybody. What I'm pleased to see is that we are the bit there around removing the permanent learner loophole. So where riders can currently take their CBTs every 2 years without progressing, seeing that bit in the strategies there about and also about the theory test, really positive steps. Really pleased to see those. As far as that ongoing, the needs for training, etc., I do genuinely think that's where the road safety investigation branch comes into it. So where we can look at the cause of incidents based on the safe systems, and we can see whether that is road design, whether that is future training needs, how are those changes made? I think the road safety branch, investigation branch, is a real positive step there.
Okay. Saul Jevons, can motorcycling actually be compatible with a safe system?
If it isn't, then we're really in trouble and haven't got a safe system. There are about 1.4 million people in the UK who use power two-wheelers. They need to be just as much part of the safe system as pedestrians and cyclists. I did a presentation at the Road Safety GB conference with Craig Carey-Clinch from the National Motorcyclist Council, where we outlined some of the ways in which motorcycling can be integrated. It's not to say that it's without challenges, but yes, absolutely, it's part of the safe system.
I've just made Craig a presenter. Craig, if you have any comment that you would like to share with us, you can unmute and just and comment on what you've just heard from Saul and from Leanne. Hello, Craig.
Hello. Hope people can hear me okay. Yes, I mean, that's very welcome that we're seeing all this in the strategy. There hasn't actually been a proper review since 2013, so I think there's one that's very well overdue. Regarding the safe system, if you exclude one mode of transport from the safe system, you don't have a safe system. And I think the strategy overall takes a very good step towards integrating motorcycling into wider road safety policy and process. There's several very positive references throughout. The review terms of reference, as far as we can see them, do look at all sorts of areas the NMC and others have actually commented on. So overall, yes, all good, but we need to move forward. Previously mentioned about the need for resourcing on the ground. Very important, joining up strategy across different parts of the function of transport in general. So we actually see more consideration and wider transport policy, so that unlocks investment for safety further down the line. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Leanne, let me come back to you. Just thinking, what ideas might be worth trying on engagement and partnership with rider groups, especially those who like to be unreachable, shall we say? That sort of co-creation opportunity. Anything to think about there?
Yeah, I think it'd be wrong for me not to mention at this point in the NFCC position statement, what we were looking for was a call for a statutory duty for fire and rescue services to be involved in prevention. Disappointed not to see that. However, as far as engaging with those groups, I think that peer-to-peer influence, definitely using more of that, either a respected community figure or using peers to deliver their safety messages in their own language. We see a lot more effect from those than we do with an official branded campaign, and using adverts in places where motorcyclists are most likely to see it. So, for example, fast food apps, Uber Eats, Deliveroo, that kind of thing. And really the bit around businesses signing up to the new national work-related road safety charter. If a courier is riding dangerously, then the messages being, some of that responsibility being for the businesses as well.
Thank you very much indeed. Just to round up then Saul, in fact, Saul, stay with us and let's move on to the it says drivers and riders at work is our next topic. So please, let's just bring that straight in, and I'll ask you, Saul, straight away. Driving and riding for work, is the strategy good news?
It's great news. So my biggest disappointment in the 2010 road safety statement was that DFT at that point regarded driving for work as just being another part of driving, whereas there's a huge amount of research that shows that you're significantly more likely mile for mile, motorway mile for motorway mile, adjusting for age and gender and all the rest of it, significantly more likely to be involved in a crash that involves injury if you are driving for work because of the specific tensions within that. Only about a third of motorcyclists are leisure riders. So the other 2/3 are either commuting to and from a place of work or are riding for work. So I'd like to see sort of commuting taken a bit within that remit as well. But yes, I think there's a huge amount of stuff which can be done by working with employers and building on. We've already got some really good practice out there. But actually pulling that together, getting that across government and public organisations as well as across the private sector, I think it's one of the areas where we've actually got some of the biggest opportunities to hit those targets.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Mark Cartwright from National Highways. What does the strategy mean for employers?
Well, first of all, let me just say I think it's really good news, and we're delighted that DFBB has been specifically named in there in relation to at-work driving. We take the stance
DFBB, just be careful, in case anybody doesn't know, driving for better business.
Driving for better business. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we welcome it. We think it's good news. We're already aware that it started to increase awareness across industry of their obligations and the risk that's attached to at-work driving, and it starts the conversation. It also supports individuals within organisations who are already fighting the fight and taking it to board level and actually making things happen. So very welcome.
Now, data shows that certain sectors such as delivery, trade, care and logistics are consistently overrepresented in work-related crashes. So what targeted measures could work for those sectors, do you think? And are we prepared to face down industry resistance if necessary? And Saul, maybe you can pick that up. Saul Jevons.
I think at the moment, one of the problems is we don't know enough about the sector-specific stuff, and hopefully that's one of the things that the Road Safety Investigation Branch might bring us. We don't have enough granularity within the data that's collected at the moment. So, for example, we know that mile for mile vans cause the biggest amount of death and injury as vehicles, but we don't know if those are the door-to-door delivery type services or whether it's plumbers and builders or the post office. We literally at the moment we just don't know in terms of that data stuff. What's been done by the RSIB equivalents in other countries, I think Sweden did a study where they actually said, okay, we're going to do a thematic investigation looking at the issues around door-to-door courier deliveries. And they really got down into actually how big a problem it was and what some of the issues were behind it, and then came up with a strategy to address it. So we need the RSIB to be a lot more than a data crunching body.
Okay. And Mark Cartwright, what do you think are the key? Let's look at the Charter for Business. What are the key parts of that, and what should all businesses be looking at?
I think the key parts we've already alluded to be honest, James, in so much as all the elements are great. But the fact that it started industry thinking about it and recognising the level of risk and everything that goes along with that, the safety charter itself is fantastic. I've got to be honest, although I'm not a big fan of increased legislation, the fact that the implication is there, but if industries don't sort themselves out, that there could be legislation coming down the lines. The safety technology is great. I think the RSIB gives a focal point on this. An awful lot of organisations don't seem to get the fact that they have it's a health and safety responsibility at the end of the day. It's as simple and straightforward as that, whether it's a big fleet or whether it's a gig economy provider, and actually having that focus, excuse me, through RSIB, that is exactly the case, and that search, if you like, for systemic failure and themes, I think, is very, very positive. I think it starts the conversation is the biggest single thing for me, James. It gets organisations thinking about their responsibilities and the accountability within their organisations.
And briefly, Mark, we Saul mentioned about industry resistance. Are you facing resistance? How do you face it? How do you face it down?
It's interesting that comes up so often. We don't particularly identify industry resistance. I absolutely accept the fact that we tend to be engaging with the converted, but actually the converted are converting more people as we're going along. And as you come down that, to be blunt, that food chain of organisations who are operating vehicles on the road, then actually there's a lot of support for doing it in a safer manner. You will always get that difficult final 10, 20%, whatever the number is, and I guess we're implying that that's within kind of gig economy kind of stuff. But actually the principles are exactly the same. And if those organisations who are engaging with those difficult fleets to convert have the courage of their convictions and stop giving them work and cut off their access to work streams, they'll either get off the road or they'll buck up.
Thank you very much to Mark Cartwright and to Saul Jevons. I'd like to introduce you to Stuart Lovett from TyreSafe, who will give us his point of view on behalf of the organisation TyreSafe.
Thank you, James. At TyreSafe, we welcome the government's new road safety strategy, of course. The Secretary of State is right to emphasise that success depends on local delivery through effective partnerships. This is the very core of TyreSafe's mission, bringing people together to tackle the life-threatening risks of unroadworthy tyres. We provide the research-backed resources our partners need to drive societal change. It's also rewarding to see TyreSafe's programme recognised within this strategy. We remain fully committed to working with all stakeholders to deliver on our goals. However, while we support the long-term vision, we must be honest, much of this strategy focuses on future consultations and data analysis. To achieve a 65% reduction in KSIs, we cannot wait for years for further reviews and consultations. Time is short, and we believe this is a missed opportunity to mandate what could be done and should be done now. We are still seeing an over-reliance on Stats 19 data rather than relying on the wealth of existing government data to set immediate priorities. For example, we have a wealth of MOT data that can act as a leading indicator. ROSPA's National Accident Prevention Strategy already calls for a clear combination of stronger enforcement and better public education. Further, through PACS, we have submitted a paper outlining exactly how we can act today. Unsafe vehicles is hardly mentioned, if at all, in this strategy. And we would argue unsafe and illegal tyres are so obvious and so enforceable. While we would welcome a stronger acknowledgement of these ready-to-go solutions, for now, we will focus on delivery as time is pressing to meet these challenging targets, and we are ready to support you all.
Thank you very much, Stuart Lovett from TyreSafe. The technology section now from the strategy. I'm here to discuss that. Chris Spinks from Wescatec and Med Hughes from Road Safety Support. You're both very welcome. Chris, the strategy places a lot of emphasis on technology as an enabler of safer roads. From your perspective, what does it get right about enforcement technology?
Good morning, James. Morning, everybody. For me, it's not just about enforcement technology. It's the whole issue around technology and innovation, which is massive. The main thing that the strategy has got right, in my eyes, is that it's been recognised as a key element in that casualty reduction. So what that means, I hope, and like a lot of other people on this call, I am concerned about the numbers of times consultation, exploration, and those kind of words are mentioned. But I hope that this will allow specific areas to now be focused on And then that focus can be polarized to make best use of the amazing amount of technology, of data and innovation that is available to the road safety industry sector that currently is not really known widely outside of that sector.
So how do we ensure technology and innovation translates into fewer people killed and seriously injured?
Short answer, bit of a cliched answer, but it's about partnerships. It's about more data sharing partnerships, and not just between police authority or police and NHS or fire service and those statutory agencies, but it's about private sector being much more involved. There is a huge amount of knowledge, experience that is within that private sector that is not, I feel, being utilised for whatever reason. Historically, there's issues around private sector and public authorities and concerns around conflicts of interest, which I totally get. But if there's well-written and properly managed data sharing agreements between private sector and those statutory agencies, that knowledge and that expertise can be pooled to, I think, a massive, massive definite benefit going forwards. And also cut some of that red tape, make it more accessible for companies to actually try new products on the road, for motor manufacturers to actually feel like they can extend and spend and make those products that are available in terms of technology much more available. It takes an inordinate amount of time to get the number of products that are out there that will definitely save lives actually out there being used, trialled, and then finally adopted.
Thank you very much, Chris Spinks. Med Hughes, how worried should we be about the scale of the emerging ghost plate problem? And what mix of technology and operational practice is needed to stay ahead of it or to get ahead of it?
Well, I think it's time to look at how we register vehicles, how we recognize them on the road, how their identification is done, and get away from the idea that the number plate is the be-all and end-all of everything. And it's perhaps time to look at, within this strategy, the true effectiveness of ANPR technologies. Dr. Rob Gurney and his colleagues have done a lot of work looking at how we measure effectiveness. So maybe this is the ideal opportunity to take a step back and say, well, how do we actually recognize vehicles and their owners and link them all together? My cat has got an ARFID around its neck and I can tell where it is 24/7 if I want to. And yet we're still relying on cameras recognizing, written data on plates. So I think they're not going away. We need to get the best possible, but we also need to expand that idea and think about working with the police's, head of science and technology to see there has to be a 21st century solution to this.
There is a load of raw data out there, isn't there? So how do we ensure that gets turned into the intelligence police and authorities, councils can use?
Yeah, there's turning noise into decent signals is the challenge for policing everywhere, turning information into intelligence. What I look back at is as we look at the targets that have been set, and I really do welcome having targets in place, even if we don't achieve them, at least it will help us with something like this, which is that the targets should drive the intelligence gathering and should help us actually identify which of the information out there is actually valuable and which is just background noise.
Med Hughes and Chris Spinks, thank you both very much. I am going to hand over to Simon Turner for our second little roundup of questions and comments that have been received. So, Simon, over to you for a little bit.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you, James. I'm struggling to keep up with the chat. There's that much going on, but it's a really great conversation. So some of the key points from the last sort of half an hour or so. Peter Barnett would like to see a strong link between coroners and prevention of future death reports to the Road Safety Investigation Branch. Joe Shiner was agreeing with Mark Cartwright's point on employers' willingness to engage, saying the police are finding that businesses are increasingly supportive and that those who aren't are usually the ones that they think, well, they're going to be worth looking at in other areas too. Just adding my own comment into Mark's piece, I think the charter could actually make a real difference here. I think we would very quickly see large companies demanding this from their supply chains, but the public sector is also going to have to lead in this respect as well, with their own supply chains. And just on the last final comment on the last discussion from Helen Wells, technology has huge potential, but we have to understand every innovation in context. Lots of things that work in the lab have unpredictable implications when let loose on society, and significant implications for the wider criminal justice system. Full impact assessments, piloting and evaluations are essential. I just put a final point on, but I know we've probably got one more at the end. Keep putting the comments in and we'll do our best to publish all of those under the recording when we do it, because it really is some valuable comments in there.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. We move now to support for victims as part of the strategy. And for that, I welcome Sharon Huddleston, Dr. Ian Greenwood, and Raymond Williams, who's from Slater and Gordon. You're all very welcome. Sharon Huddleston, may I start with you? You've had to make a terrible journey. What part of that journey, just give us a sort of an overview, what's most in need of fixing and reform, and to what extent will this strategy assist in doing that?
Well, I'm concerned about the missed opportunities, actually. I'm having to fight for change as a bereaved parent. And I've had to fight for my voice to be heard for 8 years now. Road crash victims need their voices to be heard, by the Prime Minister especially. And, he listens to other victims of horrific circumstances. So why isn't he listening to road crash victims? These are violent, horrific and sudden deaths. And the society and the Prime Minister need to recognise and understand this. And something else that concerns me is the language used around road crashes as well. That needs to be addressed.
I mean, it has been, I think then in the strategy, there's a clear reference to we're moving completely away from the use of the word accident. That's something you welcome, I'm sure.
Yes, I do. And I think that what I'm concerned about is that road crashes seem to be accepted as inevitable. And I think that's what needs to be changed in people's public opinions.
Dr. Ian Greenwood, what do you see as the key differences in this strategy and how it differs between the four major road strategies that came out? There was 1987, 2000, and 2011. And what's the main learning from your point of view from this strategy? Hello, Ian.
He's got his hand up. He might need unmuting.
I think.
There I am.
Yeah.
Good morning, James. Good morning, everybody.
Did you hear the question? Did you hear?
I did. Yes, I was in the participants' place, I think. For me, I kind of use the restaurant analogy, which has been we've been waiting for this for 15 years. The last proper one was 2011, and we've now got an amazing meal in front of us. And it's almost as if we want to send parts of it back. So my starting point is I'm really optimistic. I welcome much of what's in here. There are some obvious gaps. Sharon's just talked about those. And I also know that lots of my fellow victims of road death are very disappointed because their particular issue is excluded from the strategy, or it's kicked into the long grass, or it's just not even talked about at all. But what I would say, and the reason I'm kind of optimistic in terms of my being an expert on grief because of my death of my daughter, but also because of the PhD that I did, I've looked back at the four major strategies that we've had over the last few decades. And if we contrast, and this is why I'm optimistic, if we contrast the 87 and the 2000 ones, James, that you reference, the two earlier ones had targets. They had forward momentum with very specific and clear plans. They had political leadership that was visible across the airwaves. They had very clear accountability and governance structures that went all the way down into all the different players. They had structures that enabled and demanded support from cross-government. And they had money. I think that's one of the big things that's missing from in here. And if you contrast that to 2011 one, much of that was missing, and much of that took us backwards. There was less money, there was less people, there was no targets, there was no accountability structures, there was localism. I could go on. So I'm contrasting those three strategies. I'm optimistic that the current one is like the two earlier ones. Yes, there's lots of gaps. Yes, there's things that are missing, but I think we should be optimistic. And I think victims like myself should be really encouraged that government are really taking this seriously, and I think we shouldn't underestimate that. Government are now talking about a priority they haven't done for 15 years. That in of itself, I think, is really optimistic and positive. And I said to Lillian Greenwood when I met her on Monday, we'll be back for more on GDL.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ian Greenwood. Let me bring in Raymond Williams from Slater and Gordon. You were a family liaison officer, so you're ideally placed to comment. The government is now setting national casualty reduction targets. Should there also be clearer expectations around minimum standards of care for road victims? And what can you do to push for those standards nationally?
First of all, like everybody else on this call this morning, and it's so great to see over 500 people listening in this morning. I've got more than 20 years experience as a family liaison officer before I retired from North Wales Police, and now with Slater and Gordon, we work closely with several fantastic local and national charities that provide excellent quality and well-needed post-collision support to families following road traffic collisions.
So going to the point that the minimum national standards, what needs to happen, do you think, Raymond?
Yeah, well, I'm pleased that this ambitious strategy mentions that the Ministry of Justice is now to consult on a new victim code, which has been a little bit of a postcode lottery depending on the charities working in different areas. So I'm hoping that this will offer us a consistent both referral processes and services for Wales and England. And I hope also that the families of road traffic collisions who have lost loved ones will receive the similar report to those that the homicide cases are receiving. And of course, I've been involved in road safety since the early 90s in one shape or form, and I look forward in playing my part with everybody else on this call this morning to make sure that these targets are achieved by 2035.
It's good. Give one bit of advice to making this consistency happen and to bringing it much more together and integrated. What would your advice be?
Well, for everybody that is interested, like all of us, is to taking part in the consultation process now, which is a fantastic opportunity, isn't it? We've had the foundations is the strategy, but it's up to all of us now, the charities that support the families, to have a clear, strong voice in making sure that their ambitious ambitions do take place and the government do listen, and to make it a consistent approach rather than depending on one or two strong voices.
Thank you so much, then, Raymond Williams. Sharon Huddleston, briefly back to you. Ian Greenwood said about we're coming back for more on GDL. Will you be part of that? What will you be hoping to achieve? How will you keep the pressure and momentum going?
Yes, well, I, of course, am very concerned that the strategy didn't go far enough for young drivers and didn't include the safeguarding element of a graduated driving licence, that newly qualified drivers don't carry their teenage friends as passengers, but at least 6 months after passing the test. We know this is the most effective element of a phased licensing system, and it will save the most lives, as it is post-test when these fatalities occur, and the root cause is inexperience and youth. So this would have saved my daughter's life. We also have 7 coroners now that have supported this by writing preventing future death reports, and my daughter's case received one. The thing that Ian mentioned is that we're not going anywhere, is that we will be answering to the consultation, and we need action from the ministers. The evidence is compelling on GDL, and so I hope everyone here today will also write in the consultation to support the GDL and the post-test safeguard.
Oh, thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you to Dr. Ian Greenwood and to Raymond Williams. I'll bring in Dr. Rob Torok now. I hope I've made you a presenter. We did have lots more. We didn't have quite enough presenter slots, but I think you're there. So your thoughts on the strategy and what it will deliver for you as a frontline clinician.
Thank you, James. I think the most important thing it provides me is hope. The strategy provides a good starting block to build on, and I particularly welcome the commitment to the road safety investigation branch. It's an absolute key. So as a pre-hospital doctor, every time I and colleagues in the emergency services attend a collision and manage the injured humans, we're witness to the avoidable man-made harm and suffering. These incidents are the evidence that we as a nation and road system need to urgently do more differently to prevent them happening in the first place, whatever it takes. I'm optimistic about the deeper learning and opportunities to focus our prevention strategies from better use of data and data linking, such as the Road Safety Trust DFT NHS Prana project, that's Pre-Hospital Research and Audit Network. A key to improvement is a focus on speed and speed management at individual driver level. The risks of driving at excessively high speeds are recognised and intuitive. We need more focus on reducing the significant proportion of drivers who ignore speed limits or drive at slightly higher speeds than are appropriate. Real-time tracking, and Med Hughes mentioned his cat having a collar on it, which I loved as an analogy, linked with updating legislation to mandate early sharing of all data from onboard computers, mobile phones, other devices in the event of a collision, offer great opportunities to increase our understanding of the detail behind collisions, as well as influencing drivers. If they know that they have a tracker on them, and the authorities will be able to see what they've been doing in the minutes before a collision, I'm sure it's going to change their decisions behind the wheel. There are challenges to improving our national culture and attitude to road safety, and conflicting agendas have inhibited progress for a decade. We need to have courage and be bold in identifying and overcoming those barriers, and we need good leadership from the government to give road safety and prevention the focus, priority and urgency that 1,600 deaths, 30,000 serious injuries and a saving of £54 million a year deserve. I hope we see a functioning road safety investigation branch within 12 months. It was first mentioned as being launched in 2022, I think.
Dr. Rob Torok, thank you very much. I'd be very keen to have a follow-up conversation at some point soon, looking at linked police and healthcare data and how that can improve learning, but we don't have time for that now. Thank you. I'd like to hand over now to Duncan Dollymore of Cycling UK for your 60-second point of view on the strategy. Duncan.
Thank you very much. I'll get straight on with it and start by saying I share Ian Greenwood's optimism in this particular case. And I share that partly because we've had a decade where it hasn't felt as though road safety has been really at the top of a political agenda. And moving to the targets that have been included in the strategy, we're really pleased to see those. I realise targets don't automatically mean things happen, but it should mean that this issue moves up the political agenda. And it's been off it for too long. From a cycling perspective, we obviously like to see targets expressed for cycling casualties on a rate-based basis, because you can double the amount of cycling and actually make it safer. But because you've got twice as many people cycling, potentially the number of casualties might increase. So hopefully the rate-based targets can be incorporated in some of the detail. And with that in mind, we were delighted to see the proposals for the expert advisory panel to advise the Road Safety Board. So hopefully some input can be provided about that. If we look at the breadth of knowledge and people in this virtual room, there's an incredible amount of experience and knowledge that can feed into making sure this strategy works. I've not always felt over the last 10 years that all that expertise has been captured and harnessed. And one of the things that's actually missing from this strategy is a little bit more in relation to road safety awareness. The government do acknowledge in the strategy, for example, that the highway code changes introduced 4 years ago have not been embedded. But there's nothing then to say what their plan is to address that in terms of a wider highway code campaign. It would be fantastic to think that the expertise in this room, fed in through the expert advisory board, could ensure that road safety awareness campaigns moving forward are actually informed by the professionals working in this space, who I'm sure could contribute to those and make improve the nature of those. That's it from me.
Duncan, thank you very much indeed. Alan Hiscox from the British Horse Society, over to you.
Yeah, as expected, I view this through the prism of the equestrian community. And while we welcome being included in some areas, we remain largely absent from the strategy's targeted measures. We would have liked to have seen equestrians specifically included in the list of vulnerable road users who are disproportionately at risk on rural roads. 100% of horse deaths and rider injuries occur on rural roads, where the consequences of a collision are particularly severe. As with Duncan, we welcome the reference to the hierarchy of road users and the acknowledgement that the DFT needs to do more to embed these highway code changes. Currently, only 10% of road users are aware of the changes specific to equestrians. Regarding safety performance indicators, we urge the government to use our horse incidents recording websites to obtain accurate data on horse and rider deaths and serious injuries. These incidents are significantly underreported through other measures, and both horse deaths and serious injuries to riders and horses are rising, not falling. All of this highlights the need to recognise the horse rider and ridden horse, or the carriage driver and carriage horse, as a single vulnerable road user partnership. Doing so will increase the confidence within the equestrian community that this road safety strategy truly enables people to travel safely on our roads in all forms, including on horseback and by horse-drawn carriage. And our Dead Slow campaign continues.
Alan Hiscox, thank you. We now move to the topic of enforcement. I'm pleased to welcome back Chief Constable Joe Shiner with Police and Crime Commissioner Joy Allen and Dr. Leanne Savigar-Shaw from Staffordshire University. Let's look straight away. Under the SAFE system, Chief Constable Shiner, safety depends on near universal safe behaviour, not just tackling a handful of extreme cases. So how will any enforcement strategy move beyond focusing on only like the bad apples, the worst offenders, to achieve the highest possible compliance on speed, seatbelts, drink and drug driving, distraction, and etc.?
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. I mean, I think, what's really important, isn't it, is about what people think before they get behind the wheel, or whether or not they're a vulnerable road user, and actually the personal responsibility of everybody who uses the road and the network to think about what they're doing and have consideration for other users. And from an enforcement perspective, I actually think, and I was out with our Fatal Five team recently, I don't think that we necessarily target, if you look at some of our drink drive campaigns, we will stop quite a number of different people. What I do think we need to do better is to target actually using road traffic legislation, some of the criminality. And there's a lot of work under Optopaz that is already starting to go in that direction, hugely supported by the Department for Transport. So I think this strategy builds on that. There's a number of people who have made points about funding in the sidebar. And of course, police funding is something, particularly as a chief constable, I would say we don't have enough of, and we have to make choices about where we put that. You will have heard me say many times, though, that we cannot enforce our way out of the number of KSIs we have. We've got to use the technology that many people have spoken about here to actually design out road death, so that enforcement becomes more about the link with criminality and less about some of those technical aspects of vehicles or other mobility measures, because we can't enforce our way out of this. Education, prevention and technology have to play a major part as well.
Leanne Savigar-Shaw, enforcement has to kind of it has to go along with the public acceptance of it. Tell us what your thoughts are on that, and where we would be able to do more, and where there would be continued or increased public acceptance.
Thank you, James. Essentially, I think this involves a requirement for the police to work with the public. So that enforcement aligns with education and awareness and engagement in a way that doesn't seem to alienate the public from the police, but we're all working towards a shared aim and a goal, and it allows the police to work with data-informed practice and use evidence to kind of push their practice and the things that they're doing, the conversations that they're having, and the messages that we're sending out through enforcement and other messages, i.e. letters and other outcomes that come from enforcement activity and public reporting, that kind of thing. that information is sharing the notion that these things aren't socially acceptable, and you can be part of a group of people that supports safe road user behaviour and keeping the road safe. And that's the police and that's the public, and we're all as one in that.
Joy Allen, Durham Police and Crime Commissioner, can I bring you in there? Enforcement it can't do it on its own, as we hear from Chief Shiner. But where do you see the limits of enforcement as a tool, and what other things need to happen, like changes in road design, vehicle regulation, licensing, employer duties, or education? I mean, how can we bring them in, make them more effective, and the messages they bring more sustainable?
It's a good question there, James. It's a holistic approach. And I think if we are serious about safer roads, then enforcement, education, behaviour change, they all have to work hand in hand as all those other elements you've talked about. We have to, as Joe said, tackle the behaviours that undermine the whole system. And it's that, we don't tackle the driver behaviours, then we'll just get what we've already got. So those who choose to buy and use ghost plates, uninsured drivers, the fatal 4, the fatal 5, and these aren't minor breaches. They're putting everyone's life at risk. And for visible enforcement does send a clear message that the behaviours won't be tolerated, but it isn't enough. It has to drive behaviour change, and I think the education is absolutely right. We give people indoors courses if you've done 35 in a 30, but if you're really dangerous driving a 50 and a 30, you get a fine and penalty points, but no education. So I think they should pay. It shouldn't be discretionary. I think you should get the punishment, but there should be mandatory courses to look at the behaviour. So enforcement alone isn't enough. It has to drive the behaviour change, and that's where the education is really, really important. And explain why the behaviours kill and reinforcing the social norms. And I think, Joe, that the topaz one is a real critical one, linking it to serious and organised crime. And a lot of drivers we've talked about on the chat as well, the drug driving, that's demand. And if we reduce demand, we reduce supply. And a lot of the people who are supplying are on the roads as well. So real look at the opportunities of roads policing and going forward, and definitely have to get smarter about funding. We can look at reinvesting fines locally to do more resources or more into roads policing. And I think that's a really key opportunity for us, because obviously we know that government is challenging funding, but there's different ways of raising funding to invest into road safety.
Thank you very much. We are now going to consider what we do to make sure the commitments are delivered. Possibly slightly truncated conversation, but I'm bringing in Dan Campsell and Jamie Hassel. What are your thoughts then? How are we going to get how ensure delivery on the commitments that are there?
Yeah, it's a really important point, because I think, we've all talked about our optimism about this strategy and the fact that we think, those targets are stretching but achievable. One of the challenges that we put when we met with the minister prior to release was how this cascades. So we've got the governance board that we talked about earlier, ministerial leadership, which is fantastic. We've got an expert advisory group who will hopefully be continuing to hold their feet to the fire of evidence to say, well, look, these are the things that could work. But one of the challenges that we put was, how does this now cascade down into localization and application? And that strategy implementation gap is a well-known issue in public policy. We've seen it in many, many jurisdictions around the globe in terms of very ambitious road safety strategies being difficult to deliver because people have not thought about that transitional piece. So actually lessons to learn again from the likes of Scotland, who got a couple of years into their strategy and went, there's a whole piece here around capacity building, how we raise the capability within local authorities, within police and our partner agencies. And I think there's a key piece that's going to need to be addressed there about how we get that into local practice.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan Campsell. Jamie, over to you.
Yeah, I was going to say about lead safety performance indicators. So if you look at the strategy, there's only 2 leading measures in there, and they're being monitored every 3 years. So I'm not sure you can call those leading measures. But that, I think, will help us break that down to that local level sort of thing. So one of the questions in the chat was about, will this be broken down? How much is the police responsible? How much are other people responsible? And I think the problem is you can't necessarily do that, but with lead safety indicators, you can, because you can say, actually, these people are responsible for this type thing. You can do that sort of thing. So I think they're really key to monitoring the performance and making sure that, individual organisations and people, do what they need to.
Jamie Hassel, thank you very much. And also Dan Campsell. A quick roundup. We've had so many comments and questions, but Simon Turner has a selection for us for a couple of minutes. Simon.
Thanks, James. Just a few before we start to wrap up. Many people in the comments were wanting to thank those from the victim support session for all they do, speaking up on behalf of victims. When we look at stats and targets, very easy to forget that every single fatality is a tragedy. Mandy Pantol said young driver education should be a non-negotiable aspect of the school curriculum, with young drivers being obviously overrepresented. Richard Marriott, retired paramedic and current road safety engineer. I totally agree with Dr. Torok about road safety audits, but he also notes that these can be easily challenged or just ignored by developers. Craig Carey Clinch agreed with Joe Shiner's comments on funding, but would like to see the strategy lead to a release of the type of resources the police need in this area. And a final comment which made me smile, there's a long conversation around how best to communicate education to road users. Do we use sort of blood and gore or more sensitive aspects? And Ben Graham finished that conversation with, you don't teach swimming by showing someone drowning, which I thought was a very good comment. So that's it. Plenty of people asking if we'll publish the comments. We'll do our best to publish them with the recording of this webinar.
Simon Turner, thank you very much indeed. We are coming to our wrap-up time. I hope we've all had a chance to listen and make loads of notes. I've certainly made loads of notes, which I probably can't read my own writing now. Hopefully, Leanne McMahon, Jamie Hassel and Saul Jevons can read their own writing. And may I offer you each a very short wrap-up opportunity. Leanne, what are your takeaways from today's webinar?
I think just the incredible energy and enthusiasm in the room. Let's not lose that. I think we need to keep that momentum going now that we've got it started, and a fantastic session today. And thank you for putting it on. I think our entire strength is in our unity. If we are as far as we can be, I appreciate we've got different priorities, but wherever we can align those and have a single message, we are stronger in our unity. And that's always been our greatest strength. And we kind of really need to mechanise this strategy. So we now need to move to actually activating this and doing what we can to push on to the next step. So thank you very much for today. Really keen to keep linking in with colleagues, and let's continue working together. With the power is in our, the strength is in our unity, and so is our power.
Thanks, Leanne. Jamie Hassel, we've heard many times about the importance of political leadership. You can leverage that, can't you, or play your part? Tell us how important that is to you and how we get it, or more of it.
So I think for us, having one voice, or at least a coordinated voice, is really important, because then, ministers aren't being sort of picked off by lots of individual things. And that's why it's really important to get the fundamentals of this. And I think it's there, but we can still support it. So I think having that joined, unified voice is the really important thing to me.
Thank you. And from Saul Jevons, Chair of the Association for Road Risk Management, and thank you for looking after Project Edward for the past year and a bit, by the way, Saul. Thank you. Your thoughts, your concluding reflections.
Well, I think things like ARM hosting Project Edward is more of the kind of stuff we need going forward. The key thing I've written down is better partnerships. I suspect we're going to have to bin some old favourites and innovate a bit more. And it's very much a starting point. It's easy to look at all of the things that aren't in the strategy and all that sort of stuff, but actually we've got some really exciting targets. And that is the one thing which hopefully is not going to change over the life of the strategy. Everything else is up for grabs, including getting those measures in that we wanted that aren't in there, getting more funding, getting the Home Office to have these casualty reduction targets as one of their targets, rather than it just being viewed as a DFT thing. I think a lot of excitement.
Thank you, Saul. Chris Lewis, on behalf of Philip Second, Warwickshire Police and Crime Commissioner, any quick points from you to wrap up?
I think the enthusiasm, the desire to make change is so palpable. It's so exciting, isn't it? But it's converting that into actual delivery. I think that's what I'm coming away from this with, is now how do we deliver? And I do have a bias in terms of actual policing. I think this brings huge challenges onto policing and how they fit into the enforcement role. I put a little comment in the chat about on page 43, introduce a new roads policing innovation program. What's that mean? I'll leave that one there.
We will find out. Joy Allen, a few choice words from you to conclude, please.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody who's contributed to this session. So as we close today, I think for me, the message is clear. Road deaths aren't inevitable, they're preventable. We know what causes the harm on the road and we know what works to reduce it. And the challenge for us all is now turning this evidence into action. A safe system only works when enforcement, road design, vehicles, and the licence and education, all of us move together. So enforcement is essential, needs to be funded, but we cannot do this alone. And I think, as you said for previous speakers, our unity is our strength, and together we can achieve more. And I think that's what we just keep going. This is a fantastic opportunity for us to change. Thank you.
Thanks, Joy Allen. The Chair of Road Safety GB, Nicola Foster, a few words from you, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's a call in the chat for maybe some more themed webinars and things. And I think certainly themed discussion is something that the RSGB conference in November can certainly look at providing. So I look forward to more conversations on that very much. And I just wanted to support Joy Allen and Chris Lewis in Warwickshire in particular, but the calls in the chat as well for funding. And I think within the consultation on motoring offences, maybe if we can push for the fines for speeding to be increased, that gives us the potential maybe to increase the NDORS course fee, and that will keep a lot more sustainability within partnerships. And the partnerships are where we need to focus on the funding and bringing us together to deliver this amazing strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nicola. Dan Campsall.
Yeah, thanks, James, and thanks everyone for all of their input to this session. It's been excellent. In the lead up to the strategy, I described it in a few conversations as being the firing of the starter's gun. And I think, that's what we've had now. We've got a strategy, we've got direction, but I think there is still quite a lot that is needed in order for us to be able to operationalize that. But I think there are some really good hooks in there. Actually, the piece about the safety performance indicators, they're not great safety performance indicators, but there's a paragraph that says, and we're going to look at other things. There's the stuff that we could develop out of the road safety investigation branch. There's the new guidance on setting the speed limits, which I hope are very much more aligned to safe system principles than we've had in the past. So as we move into this next stage of consultation, discussion, development, I think there's an awful lot that we can continue to shape, and hopefully we can actually achieve something very significant together.
Thank you, Dan. 30 seconds. Last words to Chief Constable Joe Shiner.
Oh, well, first of all, huge thank you for putting this webinar together. I think it's been really, really helpful to you and to you and your team. But finally, all of us on this call are leaders, and there's probably something that we all wanted to see in there, but this is huge progress. And as leaders, we all have a collective responsibility now to energize this and make sure that we play our part in terms of delivering this, so that there are fewer families who my colleagues, my officers on the front line, have to go and knock on that door and give that awful message to. So let's be as positive as we can, accepting that there might not have been everything for everybody that they wanted.
Thank you. The value of this strategy will be measured in the actions we take and the outcomes we deliver together. Project Edward will be working to support you in turning ideas into practice and highlighting effective interventions and amplifying success wherever we find it. Thank you very much, really, to everyone who's contributed. Watch out for a little survey we'll be sending. Thanks for your company. There is a lot of work to do. We'll be there helping you, supporting you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. From everyone at Project Edward, bye-bye.